Welcome, folks, to the new Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Matt Gajtka, coming to you for a second consecutive day from our Pittsburgh studios, our mobile studios, and joined in just a few moments on location from Greensboro, North Carolina, by our reporter at large for Pittsburgh Sports Now, Alan Saunders. After the Pitt Panthers season is now officially over with the cancellation of the CBI due to the coronavirus outbreak. That's a phrase I never thought I would say. The Panthers are assuredly going home for the summer, for the spring, and for the summer after losing by 15 points to NC State in the second round of the ACC Tournament. Good performance from Pitt for sure yesterday to get by Wake Forest in the opening round. Pitt didn't have a bye, so they had to play one of just four teams that had to play yesterday down the Greensboro Coliseum. Today it was close at the half. Panthers just down by a bucket at the intermission, but a technical foul to Xavier Johnson early in the second half might have been a turning point. Either way, with Audie's Tony banged up from yesterday's win, the Panthers didn't have a lot in the tank. Justin Champagne didn't score a single point in the second half. That certainly draws a contrast to yesterday's 31 points. So the Panthers eliminated by NC State. Quite as good of an effort against the Wolfpack as they had just about a week ago at the end of the regular season. So they finished the season in general with 8 losses in their last 9 games. Let's bring in Alan Saunders, as I mentioned, as anticipated, from the Greensboro Coliseum in a different location. He's in one of those star dressing rooms down there, very fancy. Alan, thanks for joining us. And what is your top line thought on the end of the Panthers season?
Yeah, I think the end of the Panthers season went much as the second half of the Panthers season did, in which it just showed that they don't quite have enough depth. I think what we saw yesterday and the win against Wake Forest really showed that when this team is rested, it can be pretty dangerous. And then they weren't rested today, playing against NC State, which we kind of talked about yesterday. And then not only that, they have Audie's Tony badly hobbled by a left ankle injury, probably shouldn't have even been playing. And then Xavier Johnson, with his fourth foul, just a few minutes into the second half, really was the nail in the coffin. There's just not enough depth. I don't even know if Pitt had a lead at that point, if they'd have been able to make it hold with the guys they have left. But they certainly don't have the depth to, at that point, start digging a comeback trail. They just don't have it. NC State's a very good team. Pitt played them tightly. Until that point, they were losing by 4 when Johnson left the game. They were losing by, I think, 3 at the half. So close, but they just didn't have the bodies. They don't have the depth to run with a team like NC State that's likely headed to the NCAA tournament now. And you can look at that one of two ways. You can look at it as it's a problem that they don't have that depth, but you can also look at it as a fairly easy to correct opportunity because they have a lot of the pieces that you need to be a good team, right? They've got a good point guard. They've got some scorers, at all 3 levels. Maybe could use some help from the 3-point shooting. Justin Champagne showed why it's hard to rely on freshmen scoring 31 points in the first round game against Wake Forest and just getting 9 against NC State today. But on the whole, I think they're a team that is closer than losing 8 of their last 9 games seems to suggest. It's just that depth is going to really be a force multiplier for them when they eventually get it.
Do you chalk that up to the inexperience, or was there something else in those road games that you could tie a bow around and say this is why they couldn't really make any headways when they were playing outside of Oakland?
Well, I think first of all, it's just hard to win on the road in college basketball. Even if you look at a team like West Virginia, one of the top 25 teams in the country, I think they have 2 road wins all year. So it's not some sort of like massive black mark against Pitt. They struggle on the road. Lots of teams struggle on the road. And yeah, I think an inexperience certainly goes into that. But they beat North Carolina at North Carolina, which is one of the most difficult road environments in the league. So, now down here for North Carolina, sure, but that's still North Carolina. That's still 20,000 fans in the Dean Dome. I don't know if I can make a big deal about them struggling on the road. To me, the tougher losses to swallow were the tough losses at home. They lost to Wake Forest at home in a game that they should have won. You know, they lost to Clemson. You know, those are the games that really you'd think a team that was looking like it was ready to take the next step would win. Maybe more so than, you know, like, for example, a road loss at Notre Dame, where that's a team that's roughly equivalent to them talent-wise. You know, those are hard wins sometimes.
Pitt loses by 15 to NC State in the second round of the ACC Tournament. If you're just joining us live, this is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live on our YouTube channel. I remind you to click that little red subscribe button to get more content like this. Also, Alan was in the locker room after the game talking to Coach Jeff Capel and his squad. You brought the three-point shooting, specifically with Justin Champagnie today. He went 1 for 5. The team as a whole, 4 for 18. This was the worst three-point shooting team in Pitt history. I know you talked about that, you wrote about that, and you've talked about that, but you wrote about that in the feature late in the regular season concerning the Pitt inability to break down a zone defense. But can we expect some natural improvement from some of these younger players? So many of these guys, underclassmen, of course, Xavier Johnson, Trey McGowan, Audi's Tony, Justin Champagnie. And I know we have some highly prized recruits and at least one notable transfer coming in here for next year. In Ethiel Horton. Do you think it's reasonable to say, okay, these guys are going to get at least a little bit better at three-point shooting and make this not a glaring weakness for the 2020-2021 season? There's some big picture stuff here, Alan, and of course, good stuff there from Go to Pittsburgh Sports now for Alan's coverage of the Panthers. End of the season, you have post-game reaction and picture stuff coming up. Let's talk big picture now. Seasons under Jeff Capel's belt as coach here, and he had the previous head coaching experience, getting a shot here in the ACC, the conference where he played, of course. How did you feel he handled the ups and downs of a 4, maybe a 5-month season? Of course, if you do it right, it is a 5-month season. But how did you feel he held up here? And obviously, it was an improvement in wins, both in and out of the ACC. But he himself was talking just last week and just yesterday about a team being tired down the stretch, a team that maybe lost some focus. So how would you grade his performance for 2019-20?
I think there's areas where you can definitely, like the play of Justin Champagnie. I think you can give Jeff Capel a lot of credit for taking a player that was not particularly well heralded as a scorer. You know, this was not. You know, you look at we talked yesterday about the all freshman team thing. If you look at the other guys on that all freshman team, they're all 5-star recruits, right? I mean, Justin Champagnie was not. He was not a well-regarded player coming out of high school that people thought was going to be this big-time scorer. And Capel added to his game, put him in a role where he was able to have success. Found that player that was under-recruited and really has now a potential star going forward. I mean, I think that is the same thing we saw last year with Xavier Johnson and Trey McGowan's guys that came in that were not, big-time recruits that had success as a freshman. If you look at the growth Audi's Tony has shown, hurt today, battled through an injury earlier in the year, but became, really, in my opinion, one of the better defensive players. And I actually voted for him for the ACC All-Defensive Team. Really one of the better defensive wing players in the conference. Has really added some scoring touch to his game. You saw like the game at Duke, he went off for 20+, scored 20+ at NC State, and they really missed him today. It has not been across the board, it has not been linear, but you're seeing how Capel has found these under-recruited players. He's put them in positions to succeed, and you can see the pattern of development of how this team is going to continue to get better, right? Because, anytime you're talking about building up a college program, you have to recruit. You either have to recruit above your wins and losses, or you have to earn wins and losses above your recruiting level, right? That's the only way you can get better. Because if you just recruit like the team that you were, then you stay the same forever. If you're an 8-8 team in football and you recruit like an 8-8 team, then you're going to stay an 8-8 team unless you start winning more with those level recruits. And I think what we're seeing from Capel is consistent overperformance compared to the talent level of the players he's bringing in. And now you can also see him start to get maybe some little bit better players. John Hughley coming in next year, who's is one of the best players in the state of Ohio, might end up being the best player in the state of Ohio. A 5-star kid in the following class in Jalen Hood-Schifino. So if they are already getting more out of the players that they bring in than we expected, and they start to bring in even better players, I think you can really envision the trajectory that Pitt basketball is on. And so I think from the big picture, I think you have to be very pleased with Jeff Capel. I think there were some small picture things that did not go as well as he would have hoped this season with this team, their consistency, their compete level, their effort level all the time, and just their ability to, close out a couple games that they probably should have won. There's a lot you can nitpick, but I think the big picture is very positive.
And even bigger picture, if that's even possible, from the 30,000-foot view, do you think that Pitt has now recovered as a program from the Kevin Stallings era? Zero wins, pardon me, a lot of losses in the ACC in that final season. But as we're seeing now with some of these sanctions coming down after the fact, rightly or wrongly, that's going to definitely add to the pall that surrounded his regime in Pittsburgh. So 2 years down the line, is it even possible to correct for all those wrongs, or do you see this program is still needing a couple of more steps to take before it gets back to what it once was about a decade ago?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't think they've recovered from an 0-18 season yet, and I don't think they will. We talked with Eric Hamilton today, and the video is on this YouTube channel just a couple of clicks back, and it's really worth your time to check out because he talked. Eric Hamilton started his college career at Wichita State. He went to UNC Greensboro, and then he came to Pitt. And he said, the thing that we don't have here that those teams have is that fundamental winning culture. And the only way you can build that is by getting more experienced teams and then having those teams have success. And until you have that, you're not going to be the best in the best. And those Wichita teams and those UNC Greensboro teams, they at their levels, and Wichita is at a pretty high level, they won their conference. They went to the NCAA tournament. They went to the NIT. They did the things that teams want to do at the end of the year. I don't think Pitt has that just yet. I think that's a multiple year process, and I think it's still something that they're working on. Hamilton was the only senior that played this year for Pitt. I think if you think about the best basketball teams, they need that quality leadership and experience and those elder statesmen that have been there and done that. And Pitt still doesn't have it. They entered the year 318th in Division I experience. And part of that was the 0-18 year, and part of that is turning over the coaching staff immediately afterwards. But no, they still haven't recovered from that, and it's going to probably be a couple more years before they fully do. And as far as getting back to what they once were, I don't even know if that's ever possible, but I think they can get back to where Pitt was in the last few years of Jamie Dixon's tenure, where they were a regular NCAA tournament participant and towards the top of their league. And I think you could see that happening under Capel in the near future.
I'm Matt Gajtka. Alan Saunders joins on location from Greensboro, the Greensboro Coliseum where Pitt season ends. How about NCAA talk, Alan? The huge news, just really unprecedented news when it comes to the world of major sports, whether it be college or pro, just came down a couple of hours ago from NCAA President Mark Emmert. The NCAA tournament, both men's and women's on the basketball side, and I'm presuming other championships. In fact, I know it's other championships coming up in the late winter, early spring, will all be competed with no fans in the stands. We'll just see essential staff, players, and a limited number of family members in these crowds due to the coronavirus spread, and well, actually due to the desire to limit the spread of coronavirus more specifically. So how do you think this affects the prestige of these tournaments? Does it affect it that much, or is it possible to overreact to this? Because, as we all know, this is a TV product. This is a video product more broadly, as opposed to what major sports used to be in general, which is primarily a spectator sport.
Yeah, I mean, affect the way the games are played. It's not going to matter. These are all neutral site events for the most part, so it's not like someone is losing a home court advantage that they might have had by having a home crowd there. And the other thing is in the NCAA men's basketball tournament, the seeding is based on travel. Like the better seeded teams get to stay in their region, and they're still going to get that. They're still going to be playing closer to home than the lower seeded teams. So as far as the play on the court, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. Obviously, it's going to be a huge hit to revenue for the NCAA and for the professional sports leagues and teams that are canceling things. But I don't expect it to have a major impact on the play on the court unless we get to a point where we come with situations where there are players that are infected. And I think that's the point where the NCAA would have to seriously think about just canceling the entire tournament. Because, with a 14-day potential incubation period on average, if one player on a team has it, they all could have it. And anyone they played in the last 2 weeks, and very quickly you can expand that circle to half the NCAA. And so I think that's one of the reasons the NCAA was very careful in saying these are the measures we're putting in place for now. I'm still not entirely certain that we're going to even have an NCAA tournament. And then certain things are, the Ivy League canceled their entire spring sports schedule. The CBI is canceled. And I'm sure we're going to still see more cancellations in the days and weeks to come. And, I don't really want to have an opinion about whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I'll leave that to people that are experts in the field. But I will say this is that, my job is in sports. But I think a lot of times we put an outsized importance on sports. I don't think anybody should die because they went to a basketball game or a hockey game. This is all stuff we can live without. And yeah, there are economic impacts. We talk about arena workers and cities that we're hosting and expecting to have visitors to the hotels and restaurants and bars. But we can get past all that if it means a healthier, safer country, and I'm all for it.
I know I feel woefully underqualified to comment on it myself, but I will say that I will lean toward caution. And it's not so much about if you get it, if you are a young, healthy person, like all these NCAA athletes are, but who you might pass it on to. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well here. Last thing for you, not Pitt related, but NCAA basketball related and Pittsburgh basketball related. Robert Morris returns to the NCAA tournament, if it even happens, but in theory, they have clinched a berth in the big dance. Their first since 2015. They defeated St. Francis of Pennsylvania out in Loretto. They won in Moon Township. The university is from Loretto. But they dominated that game in the NEC championship last night. Sellout crowd, 4,000 plus at the UPMC Event Center. Combining the new venue with the success of Andy Toole's program and the success of the women's program as well, coached by Charlie Biscaglia, that's still a favorite to make the NCAA tournament on the women's side. How significant of a basketball season has this been, and will this be, do you think, when you look back on it, for both sides of the RMU basketball programs?
I think last night's game was absolutely, if everything that happened to this season was to hear, last night was through the roof. I mean, it was everything you'd want in an entire season, where you have your season on the line because it's win or go home, right? I mean, they either go into the NCAA tournament or they're basically done. They win the game. They dominate the game on the court. If you look at Andy Toole's coaching job this season, I think it's maybe his best at Robert Morris from the way this team has transformed itself from the beginning of the year till now. And then you have that buy-in from those 4,000 fans. They storm the court. It was not that long ago that Robert Morris had that win against Kentucky, but none of the, I can't imagine that there's a huge, middle of the Venn diagram between the people that were at the Soul Center, 7 years ago and the people that were at UPMC or Event Center last night. Like, this is energizing a whole new group of Robert Morris fans. I'd love to hear what their season ticket renewals have been like in the last 24 hours because, that is the kind of win and the kind of inspirational event that builds fandom for years and years to come. And it's absolutely vital that Robert Morris has more of those as they and really leverage it as a weapon in basketball for both the men and the women, because I really think last night proved that it can be in that conference with the tournament games played at home. Home court advantage means so much. And I think it would mean so much to the university to really have a reliable and consistent fan base that wants to go to those games, wants to be a part of those events. I actually think would be absolutely groundbreaking for them. And that was huge. To have the women do it again this week, they've got 2 more games, obviously, would be awesome as well. And really happy for Andy, too. So many coaches in his position would have bolted the second he got a higher level offer, and he didn't, and he stayed, and he wanted to build something bigger at Robert Morris. And I think it's pretty clear that he did that.
Alan, thank you so much for your insight, both on Pitt, on the NCAA, and also on Robert Morris a little bit here. We'll see you back home in Pittsburgh. Thanks again for joining me on Pittsburgh Postgame. That is Alan Saunders. I'm Matt Gajtka. We'll wrap this up in just a couple of minutes. Again, I want to thank you for also putting up with some of the technical glitches we have as we try to get this off the ground, get the operation running more smoothly here for Pittsburgh Postgame. Put a lot of those errors, if you're seeing any with the audio, especially put those on me, as I also run the board here from, again, our studio here in Pittsburgh. Other basketball news outside the ACC. We mentioned Robert Morris. The men await their opponent on Selection Sunday, likely to play in that first 4 out in Dayton, which has become a tradition in Southwest Ohio. So we'll see. There's not going to be any fans there in the building, but presumably it will still go on in Dayton early next week. So Bobby Moe looks forward to that. Also, the Robert Morris women play tomorrow night, Thursday night at the UPMC Event Center, 7 o'clock start, NEC semifinal game against Sacred Heart. If the Colonials win, they will also host the final as the number 1 seed and the regular season champion. That will be on Monday. So keep that in mind for your local basketball viewing pleasure and information. Duquesne, the men, they still have to start the Atlantic 10 tournament. They've been sitting on the sidelines with all this controversy and coronavirus. It appears the A10 will continue as planned for right now. I keep prefacing all my statements on coronavirus and the status of fans potentially being in these buildings with for now, because it could change in a matter of hours. But at any rate, we will see, I would presume, Duquesne taking on an opponent to be determined tonight, as Duquesne did get a bye as the 6th seed in the Atlantic 10. Keith Dambrock's boys ready to go at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And if you're still following the ACC tournament, well, that, of course, continues on without the Panthers included. Tomorrow, we will see all the top 4 seeds get into action here. NC State, which just took down the Panthers by 15 today, will face Duke tomorrow at 2:30. Florida State against number 9 Miami at 12:30, prefacing that. And then in the evening, number 2 Virginia versus a winner of a game going on right now. That's Notre Dame and Boston College. And number 3 seeded Louisville facing Syracuse or North Carolina. I mentioned yesterday, so weird to see North Carolina, first of all, needing to play in the first day. But they did beat Virginia Tech yesterday as the bottom seed in the ACC tournament, which included 14 teams this time due to a postseason ineligibility for one of the squads. But Syracuse and North Carolina at 9 tonight. The winner of that will play Louisville semifinals Friday at 7 and 9 on ESPN or ESPN2, depending on conflicting broadcasts. And then we will see the championship game in the ACC tournament 8:30 on Saturday, and that will be on ESPN, the big station, the mothership. Again, this is Matt Gajtka coming to you from Pittsburgh, saying good night, and a reminder that not only can you subscribe to Pittsburgh Sports Live on our YouTube channel, but also we're looking forward to bringing you some Penguins coverage, some post-game Penguins shows with Dan Kingerski and others including myself, of course, manning the hosting chair. Penguins winning yesterday against the Devils in New Jersey, and well, we'll see if they even play that game in Columbus tomorrow. But the Pens returning home over the weekend, and they're trying to secure their spot in the playoffs, and also hopefully try to climb the Metropolitan Division standings. We'll have coverage of that on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, and also on future shows here, looking for a debut next week for the hockey version of Pittsburgh Post.